Hello YouTube, and welcome back to the Grease College YouTube channel. Today's video will be continuing our Winds of Winter 25 days, and we're going to be doing Daenerys in today's video. So it's been a little while since I've talked about Daenerys in a video in a while, so we're going to go back and look at where she's going to go. She's one of the major characters in the story, so I kind of have to talk about her if I'm going to do a Winds of Winter series. Daenerys, at this point, she is very similarly in a position where she's at the end of Season 5. She's basically been captured by the Dothraki, and I think for the most part, I think what we saw on the show play out with what happened is more or less what's going to happen in the book. Maybe different scenarios, but more or less, Daenerys is probably going to get the Dothraki to back her. That is more or less what I see happening by the end of her little mini plot with the Dothraki. And I see this probably taking up at least the first half of Winds of Winter. Now, the second half of Winds of Winter is going to be focused more on how is Dany going to leave Meereen? Like, well, who is she going to have govern Meereen, and where is she going to go forward? Is she going to get these ships from Victarion, sail straight to Westeros? Is she going to take some pit stops and maybe Pentos? What is she going to do after that point? But before we dive deeper into Daenerys' arc in the second half of Winds of Winter, if you guys like to like, subscribe, and comment, please do. It helps the channel grow. I might like this content as well. And let's get into the second half. So what I think is going to happen here is that Daenerys, she gets back to Meereen, and it's going to be one of those things where it's like, we have a lot to do and not a lot of time to do it. She's going to have to basically meet Tyrion. She's going to have to meet Victarion. She's going to have to figure out, okay, do I trust these people? Do I not trust these people? Do I need these people? Are they worth keeping around? She's then going to have to assess what happens with Barristan, whether he's alive or not. In my canon, he is going to be alive, hopefully, at this point of the story. She's going to see how he governed. There may be repercussions of this, or maybe she just sees that he worked in his own best interest, which is probably how she looks at it. But more or less, what I think is going to end up happening is I think she's going to realize that Hizdar really wasn't behind the Sons of the Harpy. He was really someone that I think was being used by the Green Grace, if anything. And I think that Hizdar actually probably is given the governance of Meereen. He seems like he does a fairly good job of it, or at least a decent job. And I think it makes sense that you have to have somebody stay behind to govern the realm. And I also think that Dany realizes that this marriage isn't going to work out and basically gets a in-world divorce, more or less. And I think that's how their relationship ends, because I think Daenerys being open to having another relationship will be kind of huge coming over to Westeros. And I think that relationship just didn't accomplish what it was supposed to do for Daenerys. Now, moving on, I think Daenerys decides, okay, let's take Victarion's offer of getting these ships. And I think for a time, Victarion stays loyal to Daenerys. I think this will change based on the fact that as these things continue to happen, and the longer Victarion stays with Daenerys, I feel as though he is going to feel like he's not in this position where, oh, he's marrying Daenerys, he's in control of a dragon, or he has some sort of political status here. And Victarion's kind of impulsive, and he's not the smartest cookie in the world. I think Victarion tries to use Dragonbinder and taking the one of the dragons from her. And I don't think that's necessarily going to work out. I think what this could do is possibly have a dragon kind of go towards Euron. But the other thing here is I don't actually think Euron's going to live. So will this make a dragon just kind of go rogue? I don't know. So there's a lot of interesting things to talk about here. And I think Daenerys will see this betrayal and she will end up killing Victarion. So either way, though, she's still going to have the Iron Fleet. Even if the Ironborn try to maybe leave or rebel, she can still put down that rebellion. And I think a lot of the Ironborn will kind of at this point be away from Victarion, because if Victarion's very much going into religions that are outside the Ironborn religion of the Drowned God, talking about the Red God, and Victarion at this point, I think the Ironborn will be whispering that Maquaro has kind of changed Victarion. He's not the same person, and that maybe whoever the next captain of the Ironborn of this fleet, specifically that Victarion has, just also does the same thing and goes with Daenerys anyway, as they maybe don't like Euron. So I think that still works out the same, because there has to be some sort of transportation for Daenerys' forces to get to Westeros. Now, I do think she makes a stop in Pentos. For one, she thinks that Illyrio, or at least to some degree, has some sort of, is more or less her friend, even though she does view Illyrio as someone that is nice to her because she can get him further in life. Now, another thing we have to think about is that Tyrion, at this point, will have actually met Illyrio and spent a good amount of time with Illyrio. And that he would probably know that Illyrio is hiding Aegon. And this would raise a lot of question marks for Daenerys, because why wouldn't Aegon be brought up, or maybe some relation with maybe Daenerys or Viserys? Even if they don't know, like, they can still keep Aegon's identity secret from the public, but at least tell Viserys or Daenerys, and this never happens. So why would that be? And I think that there's a lot of questions Daenerys would want to have with Illyrio about all of this. And I think that would be an interesting conversation. And I think that's going to be the first trickle effect of Daenerys starting to realize that Aegon is not the person that he seems to be. I am someone that believes he's a Blackfire. Even if he is a Targaryen, there's still a lot of question marks that we have here on why Aegon was really getting special treatment compared to Viserys and Daenerys. I think there's going to be a lot of question marks there. And I think this actually will be where Illyrio dies. I think Illyrio will die because of Daenerys really seeing this again as another betrayal. Someone else that really was not telling her the truth, was using her, and really she was a puppet to Illyrio. And I think this is going to lead Daenerys now to going to Westeros. I think that'll be kind of like her last little thing. I think she goes to Pentos. She kind of, it sets up what's going on in Westeros pretty nicely as Aegon is taking the throne. And to end off, I think you have it where she's sailing to Westeros. I think that's more or less where you end off. Like, or not sailing to Westeros, but like it's the final time where like she's going to Dragonstone, where it's not like, oh yeah, she's going to stay and make some other stops. She's sailing now to Dragonstone, and that's going to be where A Dream of Spring picks up. Now, A Dream of Spring, we come to an interesting point of the story. Because I think George is faced with a decision. Does he want to clear up the Young Griff and Dany plotline now? Or does he want to do it later? So he could always do the route of the show, where the show handled the others first, and then we had who was going to sit on the throne after. In the book series, where I think this could possibly go, is that either one, Daenerys sees the threat, whether that's being in contact or literally hearing and seeing that the wall has fallen, that the North has been overrun, and there's chaos right now. Because again, it's not going to be the same scenario that it was in the show, where the show, they needed some reason for the wall to come down, so they had to have Jon and Daenerys' relationship have fruit much earlier than I think in the books. Where in the books, I think it's going to be a scenario where, yes, she's going to interact with someone like Jon, she's going to interact with all these other characters, but she's also going to have the quite obvious idea here that there's a hole in the wall, and all of the North and all of these forces that were previously in the North have retreated to the neck. Why would they do that? So I think what we're going to see here is that Dany and Jon team up at the very least. Now, the question mark, if this happens, is does Young Griff join in? Is everybody really involved and united against the others? And I don't know if I like this route better or worse, because in this route, you'd have to assume maybe Daenerys, Jon, and Dany have a somewhat decent working relationship. I much more like the idea that Dany comes over and she mops up Young Griff pretty quick. Again, she has dragons. She has a bigger, superior force. She has really more backing, maybe not in Westeros, but she has every advantage. Where I think we'll see some sort of war. I think Young Griff probably loses. But I think Young Griff and everything surrounding his plotline is going to show Daenerys. I don't know if I want to go Mad Queen route with Daenerys, but I think it'll show a lot of her internal conflict, where Daenerys is really struggling with a lot of emotions, being betrayed so many times, and the issues of war and loss. I think Barristan, like I've talked about, will die at some point in one of the wars, either way. If Barristan switched to Young Griff's side, maybe if he believed that this was Rhaegar's son, that could be the dagger for Daenerys. I think Daenerys, by the end of the story, is going to be a very broken character, where I think the best route for Daenerys and the happiest ending for me, for her, because I think either she's going to die because she's becoming unstable, it's not great for the realm, she's not a good ruler, and we see something where the show, like the show where Jon has to kill her. I hope instead what George does is George shows us how Daenerys is a very flawed character, where she's struggling with a lot of things going on, and maybe she makes a rash decision here or there that make you feel very split on her character, where she still has a big fan base, but then there's that other side of that fan base that starts to realize this isn't a great person. It's kind of like Tyrion, where Tyrion has a lot of people that like him. I am included. I like Tyrion, but at the same time, Tyrion's not a good guy. He makes a lot of decisions that, and even thinking, that are not great. So to me, I think by the end of this, I think Daenerys, throughout all of these issues she's either caused or bad decisions she's made, through her pain, she makes a sacrifice, and that maybe that's bringing Lightbringer to the front, where Jon has to stab her through the heart and kill her. I think one way or another, Daenerys will not have a happy ending in this story, which is unfortunate. I think Daenerys has been searching her entire life for a home, security, a place of happiness, I guess. And I think in Daenerys' mind, she thinks that's the Iron Throne. And we've seen repeatedly that the Iron Throne really only causes you stress, pain. It's usually a place where if you are living like happily, like you're feasting, usually the realm is suffering. It's a very weird thing where we don't see very often where a king is living happily and the realm is also prospering. It just doesn't happen very often. And I think that's something that Daenerys will kind of find out, and how, and we've already seen the prelude of this with Meereen, how controlling people, not even controlling people, but ruling people is very difficult, because you have so many people that have so many different ideologies, they come from so many different backgrounds. It's hard to manage that and make everyone happy. As we saw with House of the Dragon, Viserys struggles with this throughout the entirety of season 1. And that's something I think can be mirrored in Daenerys in the book, where she tries to please everyone, and in the end, it just makes her look even worse. And I think Daenerys, by the end of it, dies. I think maybe a happier ending we could see for Daenerys, which I don't think is likely, is that she does eventually get to live out her days at this house, the Red Door, which is probably at the Sea Lord of Braavos, is in Braavos. I think it's very unlikely, probably doesn't happen. Also, I think Daenerys has come too far through all of her things, that she is either going to get the Iron Throne or she's going to die. So that is kind of how I view Daenerys' character going forward. I think she's really starting to hit the peak of where it's going to be where we enjoy her character the most. I've always said Daenerys, to me, has been a character where she's very hit or miss. I think book 1 was a pretty good book for her. It was a really compelling story for her as a character. Book 2 was kind of almost a filler book for her. Not a lot really happens with her. I mean, the House of the Undying, one of the best chapters in the entire book series. But again, it's a lot of like walking around. Karth stuff happens. It's like, whatever. And then you have Storm of Swords, where it's, again, her taking more of a leadership role and how she deals with that and how she is militarily as a conqueror. I think it's her best book. And then Dance is kind of the fallout of that, and her struggles with ruling, which at times can be very slow paced. Even though I think she does have some good chapters in Dance as well. But thank you guys all for watching this video. Let me know what you guys think about Daenerys, where she's going. And I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye, guys.